Hey folks, I want to show you something and tell you an interesting story about it. When I was a young boy, I had a collection of tools because I always loved tools. And I had them all laid out in my bedroom at one time on a little cart. And my dad come in there and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I told him, these are my tools. And he was a tool maker, so he loved tools too. So he left and he come back and he had one of these. And he gave it to me and he showed me basically about all he knew about it pretty much. Was how to use it as a continuity tester. This meter was sold by Radio Shack late 60s, early 70s up in there. It was like $9.95. It was a really sorry meter, especially compared to today's meters, but I'll show you how it worked here in a minute. But he showed me this and he showed me how to use it basically as a continuity meter, and that's all I knew. Put this in where it says KOM, and I think you put this in DC common. And you had to change the pins for what scale you were on. But, you had a continuity tester where you could, and he showed me on a pen, ink pen out of his pocket, how you could test from, to see if one part was connected to another or not, see the meter move. Well, that intrigued me, and I checked every light bulb, anything I could find for months. And this was the first thing that sparked an interest in electronics for me, was him giving me this old meter. And it served, that interest that he bestowed in me has served me my entire life. It's made me a living. I'm a electrical controls engineer now and a ham radio operator, and I work in electronics. So it started me down the path that really has made me a living my whole life. But this meter was really neat. It was like, I bought this at a ham fest, as you can see, for $3. And it's brand new in the box, don't look like it was ever used. I put a battery in it. The cool thing about it, if there is a cool thing about it, the little pin electrodes, you can see how they work, and then you would have to zero it with the little adjustment there, and then read it on the scale, the resistance. And then of course you could set it up for AC or DC volts, and you put this in, like 15 volt, 150 or 1,000 volt. Now I wouldn't want to measure 1,000 volts with this little thing. I'd be a little nervous with doing that. But the interesting thing about it is if you put it on 15 volt and you measure like small batteries, test batteries with it. It was a good little battery tester for the reason, I don't know if it tells you on here, yeah, right here. It was 1,000 ohms per volt input impedance. And today's meters are around 10 mega ohms per volt. So if you're measuring 10 volts, it's 10 mega ohms input impedance. So the purpose of that is that when you are testing a circuit with the meter is such a high impedance, it doesn't draw any current, or draws very little current from the circuit, so it doesn't load the circuit and cause, an erroneous reading. But this thing had such a low input impedance, so if you're measuring a 1.5 volt battery, that's only 1,500 ohms. 1,000 ohms per volt, that's only 1,500 ohms. So it actually loads the battery a little bit. So if you're seeing full 1.5 volts on a AA battery with this thing, that battery's charged because you're actually loading the battery. And that's how a battery tester works. It actually places a load on the battery and measures the voltage under load. Well, this thing does that by accident, so to speak. But this thing started my entire life interest in electronics. I don't know whatever happened to the one my dad gave me. Of course, it was gone years ago. I'm 60 years old now, and that was, 10 years old. But I remember taking it to my grandpa and showing it to him, and he's the one that showed me that you could test light bulbs with it. Because if a light bulb showed continuity through it, then the filament was good. And I was just amazed by that. I tested every light bulb, took bulbs out of the old farm truck, checked them. I experimented, and that's how you learn, by experimenting. But I thought it was interesting. I seen this at a ham fest the other day, and I said, I got to have that. I'm going to put it up on the shelf and remind me of my dad starting me down this path. because he's been gone a long, long time now. And I just wanted to share that with you. The meter, they must have sold a gazillion of these. I think they were like $9.95, and that was in the early '70s. And it was the lowest, cheapest meter that they sold at Radio Shack. Radio Shack used to be, man, that was the candy store. My brother was really big into CB radios at the time. He was always going to Radio Shack. So I would always want to go to Radio Shack with him, and I could just spend hours in there looking around, and I never had any money, but I memorized their catalog. Every year I memorized their catalog, and I miss those days of thumbing through the catalogs, because we lived out in the middle of nowhere with my grandparents, and the Sears catalog, the Penny's catalog, and the Radio Shack catalog, man. And you remember the Allied and Lafayette Electronics. I'd get all them catalogs, and my grandmother used to, tease me a little bit about, because I would just sit around and look at catalogs all the time. That's all I had to do. I dream, I just dream of having things, because we didn't have anything. But and now as an engineer, guess what I do all the time? I sit and hunt through catalogs looking for parts, looking for specs. Of course, a lot of them are on the internet now. But even as an adult now, I spend my time searching catalogs, searching for parts, hunting for, compatible components and things like that. It's just interesting. I thought you might enjoy that little story. But this little meter really brings back memories. And I was surprised to find one. Oh, my. I was surprised to find one in such pristine condition. It was brand new. It's like it's never been out of the box. Daggone it, it's going to be pristine if I keep beating the tar out of it. But I thought you might enjoy that. And the thing is just so cool. Absolutely, absolutely amazing that it has survived. It even has the manual, the original manual in the box there. But I'll put it up on the shelf here in my ham shack. And every time I look at it, I will think of my dad and how he began my trip down the road of electronics. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed this little brief bit of history. Have a great day.